Hey all, it's Emily Fraser. I have not been on here for a minute because it's been a very busy past few weeks. I'm trying to get some pretty dramatic editing going on with Gallery. It's been kind of funny because I started this set of videos to kind of let people know what the chapter layout was going to be and what was going to be in the chapters. And then a couple of weeks ago, overall content got so large that the book was getting to be to a point that I didn't necessarily trust the binding or the cost that it was going to take to make it at that size. So I took all the chapters that had to do with writing the game and all the chapters that had to do with just playing the game, and I separated them into two separate volumes. So we now have a player's book called Muse and a guide's book called Stagecraft, which doesn't contain anything secret or hidden or anything. It's not a thing you have to hide from the players. It's just something that every table only really needs one of, because it's reference material and it has to do with specific setting environments that you're not going to see every time or care about every time. Things that you don't necessarily need to be fishing past in order to find specific character traits. And then Muse has all the stuff that you need to build a character and play that character without the additional setting detail. It has some setting detail because obviously we want people to just kind of know about the setting, but without like the kind of minutia that kind of only applies to the guide. So those two books got separated into two separate volumes. Muse is about 300 pages, and Stagecraft is around 120, something like that. And I've been super pleased with how it's looked since then. The book is trimmer, it's easier to navigate, it'll cost less to print, it'll be, less heavy, and as we are moving into ever more uncertain times with printing and physical media production, I just feel like it's going to be a safer bet to have a book that isn't 450 pages long. So, we now have two books, which is pretty neat and pretty different from the last time we spoke. The chapters that I've read to you already in our little summation, I think are still valid. I don't think any of that content changed. Some of them might not be in the Muse book. I actually had the Muse book here in front of me. Another thing that's happened over the past week is we became content complete, with the exception of one chapter, which is just the enormous spell chapter. That's a big, long formatting mess to happen. And formatting and editing and images all still need to occur. But all of the play content, all of the writing is finished, which is really cool to have done. So in Gallery, we have the intro section, which was here before. The system, obviously. Character creation, motifs, which we chatted about in previous videos, manifestations, which we chatted about in previous videos. Instruments, which we also talked about in previous videos. All this content, as well as the stories, are still present in the player book, so that you have all these to reference. And then the chapter that used to be called First Light is now over in the Stagecraft book. We have this new chapter called The Gallery, which has some of the content from First Light, specifically setting-related material. Has a story attached to it, as they all do, and then deals with things like the themes of the game, the setting itself, just an overview of everything that's in here so that players have some grounding of what it is they're going to be talked about, as well as places they might want to go. And then within the Stagecraft book, which is actually over here, we get into those a little bit further. Back in the Muse book, we have overviews of the patrons, and then combat descriptions so that you know how to play. Included in the combat chapter now, which was not here a week or two ago, is combat demo. I really like including these in books. HSD had one as well. It just helps you understand how things look in sequence. In this case, we have a pretty high-level character who's fighting two different enemies so that we can see a series of different powers, including brushwork powers and Muse powers being used in combat in real time. That's all through there. Lights. And then the last chapter in the Muse book is brushwork, which leads into the sketchbook, which is the one that still needs to get put in here because that's just like 50 pages of spells. There's a lot of content in the sketchbook section that needs to get put into this. But beyond that, content is complete. So that's really awesome. We like to be in that particular stage. Over in the Stagecraft book, which is, again, the DM's guide, not a secret book, if you are a player who really ends up enjoying the setting, I recommend you grab Stagecraft because it'll just give you more information and more fun stuff to work with. But while every player, I think, needs a copy of Muse so that they can reference it, check their powers, have their stuff available, every table just needs one copy of Stagecraft because you're just not going to be in it as often. The guide will be using it fairly regularly, but the players will probably just need to reference it once in a while for a special rule. They will, however, need to reference it once in a while for a special rule. It's not like an optional book. As part of the core material, if you've got 4 players, you need 4 copies of Muse and 1 copy of Stagecraft. That will make sure that you have all the mechanics available that you need to use because they are referenced. It is there is system in this book. It's just system that isn't being used every session, every time by every person. We talk about some specifics. The walkthrough of how to run a game based off the first 3 sessions is in here. We talked about that earlier in another video. The painted worlds themselves are kind of described in here, as well as how to build them. Examples of the frameworks. These are like existing painted worlds made by the patrons. Influence, patron signatures. These are all just kind of different things that have to do with the painted spaces in the game. Little section on the canvas. This is a fun chapter. This one got added when the new book got made. These are jobs. They're not classes. They're not doing anything. Like, you don't pick one of these as a character. This is just flavor and texture for the world of jobs that would not exist elsewhere. So that as you're navigating this space, you might, meet somebody like a bibliothecary or a minstrel or any of these different characters, and they have a vocation that you can learn about and maybe assist with if you want to. So it just gives the guides more texture to help build their world with. And a few of them actually do have mechanics that can be used to help the party out. So dream tenders are part of healing. Gastromancy is a thing that actually everybody can do. So this is a mechanism that's referenced fairly often in terms of player's ability. It's the primary healing form. Everybody can do it, and it's in here so that it's not, because this section is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additional spreads, that isn't going to be used by every person every time. So I put it into here so that it can be referenced when it needed to, and so that the guide has quick access to it if they want to just kind of like make these things for sale. Grafting, same situation. This will come up, players can use it, but it's a system that isn't being used all the time by everybody, so we put it in this one. And my hope with this is not to sell additional product, it's actually selling less product. It's to make it so that you're not paying for 450 pages when you're using 300 of them and occasionally referencing the last 150, for one. And for two, there's an exponential increase on price as these books get larger when it comes to print. The shipping gets more expensive. The printing gets less reliable. I think it's just kind of wiser to have them split into smaller volumes, and hoping that will work out for everybody a little bit better. Is in here now. This is a primary purchase system and something that is awarded to you as you're playing. And then the big section at the end of this one is challenges. This is where all the bad guys are. All of the different individual enemies, which now all have all their stats, are hanging out in this area, statted and ready to play with. So this gives guides a lot of material to work with to kind of jump right into the game. And I'm reasonably certain, obviously we're going through testing with this all right now, but these will probably all end up with variances over time, just as more players get on it. I am a one-person operation. It is not feasible for me to get balance for every single individual enemy in every occasion at all times. It just can't occur with one person at the helm. But I am doing the best I can with the testing abilities that I have to make sure that these are clean and balanced and fun to play against. And as the franchise continues to grow, we will get addendums if they're needed. Hopefully they won't be. We can always hope. But there's a lot here. There's multiple different factions. They have multiple different enemy types within each faction. There's an entire build your own monster section. And then there's a whole section in the back for notions and nightmares, which are very specific kind of monstrous types that are unique to this world. And that is the content of the Stagecraft book. So yeah, with that, when we continue going through individual chapter explanations and definitions, we'll be doing it from 2 separate volumes. And I'll let you know which one's coming from where.